There we go. Welcome to the latest live stream of Magical Experiments. It's been a little while since I've been on here. I've been busy working away on some projects in my life, and these things take some time. But here I am. And today I thought I would talk about the topic of self-love and how to apply self-love as a magical practice in your life. Now, for some of you might be thinking like, okay, Taylor, what is this? Are you going all new agey on us? I get it. After all, when we talk about self-love, a lot of times that's what people think of when they think about this concept of self-love. They think, affirmations. So, like I'm gonna tell myself that I love myself. They think, law of attraction, things like that. Well, as you know, I'm not a big fan of the law of attraction. So that's definitely not on the that's not in the cards for today. I'm also not a fan of. Okay, we need to adjust the slide further. How can we do this in a way that? There we go. Okay, that's a little more even. All right. Okay, one of the challenges of video making is, and I'm just going to leave this as is you have to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. And I just figured it out for right now. I'm going to get to figure this out all over again when I move my setup here, which I'm going to be doing in about a month and a few weeks, actually. Anyway, different thing. So self-love. So I started doing a self-love practice back in September of 2022. I did it. I was in a really bad place at the time. I was, and I was reading this book called "Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It," and I was reading it because I had been going through, I've been going through a rough breakup, and I was trying to figure out how to cope with that. And really, it was kind of like I was just really trying to cope with that, plus also kind of dealing with lingering grief around my divorce from the year before. So I knew I needed to take my practice. I knew I needed to go in a different direction in my life. And the problem that I had was that I was, I came to a realization. I had always been looking for love in the wrong places. I've been looking for love from other people to fill the gap or the void within myself. So I picked up this book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, and I started reading it, and I was like, okay, this is the book that I'm gonna read this. And I started reading it, and I started applying the practices to my life, and I found that it started to change my life. One of the practices was, to say to myself each day, I love myself. And I would say it multiple times a day. And, at first I didn't believe it. I mean, the first week in particular was really hard. It was awkward. It's like, but do I really love myself? Not really. I kind of took the chaos and magic mantra of fake it until you make it and applied it to this, because it was like, all right, I don't really love myself right now. I don't know that I've ever loved myself. And that was really an important realization right there. I had never loved myself before, but I decided I was going to apply this as a magical practice and see if it could transform my life. And I figured, the worst that could happen is I would do it for a month and I would come away not feeling anything. So I did it for a week, and then I did it for 2, 3, 4. And by the end of the fourth week, the end of the month, I was feeling like my life was changing. I was feeling more positive and upbeat. I'm not, and I want to be very clear here. I don't feel that self-love solves all your problems. Okay. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a law of attraction person. I don't believe in that schlock. I think it's, I think that there's certain practicalities of life that people have to deal with, and all the self-love in the world is not going to make your hard times go away. It's not going to make things automatically better. But here's what I did find. By applying self-love to my life, what I discovered is that it could give me perspective on things. It reminded me that, even in my roughest moments, there was still, if I could choose to love myself, it wouldn't necessarily make those rough moments better. It didn't suddenly change everything, But what it did do is it reminded me that I could still not that I nonetheless had a choice. I could choose to love myself. And what it really helped me realize is that, people will come and go in your life. It doesn't it doesn't matter who comes into your life. At some point or another they're going to go. That's just the reality. And yet there's one person that will never come and go out of your life, and that's you. You are the one person that you will always have, and that's really important to recognize. And you might say, "But Taylor, I met someone and they're really special, and I love them, and they love me." They're going to leave you at some point. Now, how they leave you may be it may be that you have a lifelong relationship with them, and then one day they die. Okay, I mean that's the reality of life. At some point, the person you're with may end up dying. Or maybe you get into some arguments with them, you fight with them, or whatever, and you can't resolve issues with them, or something else happens. Any of those things can happen. How they leave, that depends on you and the relationship. But at some point, people leave, or you leave them, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. But a lot of times we treat it as the end of the world. And what the self love practice taught me is that no matter who's in my life and how long they're in my life, the most important thing I can do is not put pressure on myself or the other person for their love to be the cure all. And a lot of times, romantic love in particular is treated as a cure all. As long as this person loves me, everything's going to be okay. Well, let's be honest here. If self love doesn't solve all your problems, love from someone else certainly isn't going to either. Loving someone is a wonderful experience. It can be a very tender and wonderful experience. Sometimes loving someone can be a very hard experience, though, when you're seeing that person suffer, or when that person doesn't love you, or other things along those lines. So I mean, we all have those experiences. We know what that's like. And I think it's really, and really what I'm speaking to here is the fact that love in general is treated as a cure-all. It's not. This is why people roll their eyes when they hear the concept of self-love, because they think, well, if love from someone else doesn't solve my problems, why is self-love going to do it? How's that going to do that? Well, that's where I would argue that the difference is that with self-love, you know that you're never going to leave you. Okay. You always are going to be with yourself. So you can either loathe yourself and hate yourself, or kind of like yourself but kind of not, or you can choose to love yourself. I like myself a lot, and I'm learning to like myself even more because of this self-love practice. I used to not like myself. I used to loathe myself. I used to not to really not care for who I was, and I was always looking for love from all the wrong places. I was looking for love from other people to redeem me. And really, this came down to childhood wounds. I mean, you know, I grew up in circumstances that were somewhat hard and rough, and as many people have. And one of the lessons I came away with was that I was unlovable. Well, that simply wasn't true. It was no fault of my own that I wasn't getting the love I needed to get. That was a reflection really on the people in my life and their inability to love. But with romantic love, it's treated as, you can find all these different people and they'll somehow fill the gap in your life. And that's simply not true. You have to fill the gap in your life. So what self-love does is it helps you to learn how to like and accept yourself. Again, it doesn't solve all your problems. You're still going to have rough times. You're still going to have moments where maybe you feel shame about something you've done, or you feel guilt, or maybe you're not happy with yourself, or all those things. And I say that because I've been doing this self-love practice since September. It's now April. And it's certainly helped me change my life in a meaningful way, but it hasn't made every single thing better. It hasn't automatically, for example, gotten me out of my day job. It hasn't, attracted tons of clients or things like that to my life. I've had to, all the things that I'm doing right now in my life to transform my life, I've had to take practical action on. And self-love is no different. If you're going to apply self-love to your life, you have to do it in practical ways. And I think that, like, as a magical practice, if we look at self-love, it's the same thing. Like, practical magic, if you want to make magic work, you have to apply action to it. You don't just wish for something to happen. You burn a candle, you charge a sigil, you work with the spirit. Well, it's the same thing with self-love. And of course, you take mundane actions as well. So in my case, for example, one of my self-love practices is I will look in my mirror and I will basically do self-love as a form of scrying, where I'll say I love myself, and I'll keep saying it and looking into my eyes, and I'll scry that behavior and that action, and use that to transform my relationship with myself during the day. At the end of the day, in the beginning of the day, I do a thing where I basically tell myself that I love myself, and I tell myself, that I'm choosing to manifest the life I want to manifest. But I'm taking action each day on those things too. Um, I'm writing articles, I'm creating videos, I'm developing landing pages, I'm doing all the other writing books, I'm doing all the other activities I need to do if I want to move my life forward in a meaningful way and achieve what it is that I want to do. Because let's be honest here, no action does not if you take no action, you cannot transform your life. And, you can love yourself until you're blue in the face, and it doesn't mean a damn thing if you don't change your life. That's just the truth. Okay? It doesn't mean a thing if you don't apply it to your life in a meaningful way. And this is why, in terms of my own practice around these kinds of things, I take such an approach where I really look at the practical realities. Like, what am I actually doing to take this concept and not just treat it as an affirmation, but apply it to myself? So one of the other ways that I practically apply self-love to my life is that I ask a question in different situations. Like, if I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'll ask myself, if I truly love myself, would I allow myself to be having this experience? And I use this question to help guide me toward two things. One, in in situations where I have a suitable degree of control over the situation and over my actions and stuff, I will choose situations where I know I'm feeling love. Simply and purely, I will do that. Where I feel love for myself and I feel empowered in the situation. In situations where I don't feel as empowered, where maybe I'm having to do something because like for example, working at the day job that I'm working at right now, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, yes, if I truly love myself, this is not the experience I want to be having. So what can I do to start transforming this experience? And so in my particular case, I'm looking at how I'm looking at practically the business skills that I have. I've chosen to sign up for a 10-month coaching course I'm taking those skills and dusting off my coaching skills, and I'm working on building my coaching business up. I'm continuing to write my books. I'm continuing to do other activities that will help me to eventually financially emancipate myself. So these are all things that I'm thinking about and applying toward my life in a very meaningful way in order to help myself get ahead to where I want to go. And that is an act of self-love, and it's a practical example of how to apply self-love to your life, because I'm using this principle of self-love to find mission and purpose, to focus my efforts and to go in the directions that I want to go into. So I share that because, again, I don't want you to get into this and, well, Taylor's gone off the deep end here. I mean, you can if you want to. Some people think I've gone off the deep end no matter what. But the thing is the thing that I found is that if you're going to take a philosophy such as self-love and apply it to your life, then you better have some practical methodology, some practical means to apply it. And at the same time, you need to understand the limitations of it. Self-love may help me get some perspective on a situation. It might help me ground myself when I'm feeling fear and anxiety, and in fact it does. It may help me to recognize the things that I need to do to transform my life, but it's not going to make everything better. I still have to take the actions. That's what it's about. If I look at self-love as a magical practice, I also see it in the work that I do with Aphrodite. So I do a magical working each day with Aphrodite, and where I basically dedicate myself to her. It's devotional, um, as well as to the other deities that I'm working with. But what I do is that self love practice is one of the ways that I show that dedication, because as Aphrodite is basically pointed out to me, it's like, if you don't if you want to serve a goddess of love, if you want to work with a goddess of love, then you've got to also love yourself. You can't again, you can't expect to show up for other people in whatever capacity you're going to show up if you're not showing up for yourself as well. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned with this self-love practice as I've been experimenting with it, is that, if you want to show up for other people, you've got to show up for yourself first. And I mean, I've said before, like, you can't take care of other people until you take care of yourself. And I believe that, but and I've tried to live it, but I realize now that I really didn't live it as fully as I could. I would try to take care of other people without taking care of myself. And now what I've learned to do is I've learned to prioritize myself first and foremost. And that may seem like a very selfish act, but I think it's actually a very healthy act, because if you can't prioritize yourself, how are you going to prioritize other people? It just simply doesn't work. So if we look at self-love as a practical, magical working, we really need to look at it in terms of how to apply it to our lives in a meaningful way that is transformative and helpful to us. And that's only going to occur when we examine the ways that we choose ourselves and choose the lives that we live in a meaningful way, where we're saying, hey, I love myself enough to transform my life and choose myself in a really powerful way. And here's the actions I'm going to take to actually follow through on that. And some of that may be magical, doing a devotional ritual, doing some kind of affirmation action, but I'm also going to marry it with practical actions that help me transform my life. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again sometime soon, and take care of yourselves.